Good evening, everyone. It's such a pleasure to be with you here all today. I'm really looking forward to this opportunity to share with you some of the amazing work being carried out by women here in northern Kenya to conserve the endangered Grevy zebra. I'm not sure how many of you have seen a Grevy zebra before, but I think if you have, it's not a memory that slips by you very quickly. I certainly remember the first time I saw a Grevy zebra, and it stuck with me for years. I was driving through Samburu National Reserve, and this large male walked across the road in front of me and sort of turned back to look at me. Grevy zebra have been described as old souls, and in that moment, I think I really understood why. There are 3 zebra species found in Africa, the Birchell zebra, the mountain zebra, and the Grevy zebra. And the Grevy zebra really is the largest of these species. They have these thin, intricate black stripes that cover their body, leaving their belly a startling white. They have a soft brown muzzle, and their large round ears really are a characteristic feature of their unique morphology. Grevy zebra differ from the plain zebra cousins, which are also found here in Kenya, not just in how they look, but also how they behave. Grevy zebra are adapted to survive in dry, arid environments and can go up to 5 days without water. Lactating females and their foals, however, need water every other day to survive. Breeding males establish large territories that contain grazing and water resources that the females need to survive. So as the females move through the landscape looking for these resources, the territories that contain the best of them really gives the males an opportunity to mate with the females as they walk through. Males that have not yet established territories are known as bachelors, and they hover around the territories that have already been established, looking for any opportunity to challenge the breeding males and grab the territory. Grevy zebra have really undergone one of the most substantial declines of any large mammal in Africa. From about 15,000 individuals in the 1980s, their population dropped by over 80%. And this was really to feed the appetite of the fashion industry, which required their skins to meet demand. So they really have undergone one of the most substantial declines, and not just in population numbers, but also in distribution range. So once found more widely throughout the Horn of Africa, they're only found now in northern Kenya, where over 90% of the population can be found. And they can also be found in 3 small isolated pockets in Ethiopia. Here in northern Kenya, Grevy zebra live in the same environment as the Samburu, Rendille, and Turkana communities. And often you can see them grazing together with livestock. It's not uncommon to hear people from the community speak of loneliness at the prospect of the disappearance of Grevy zebra from the environments in which they coexist. So because Grevy zebra and people and their livestock share these resources, the future or the survival of Grevy zebra and people really is intimately connected. Both are threatened by land degradation, increasingly scarce water resources, disease, and large-scale infrastructure development projects. So really the survival or the future of Grevy zebra depends on its ability to continue to coexist with people in this landscape, sharing resources that they both need to survive. And so really at Grevy Zebra Trust, we puts the people that live with Grevy zebra at the heart of designing and implementing conservation activities for Grevy zebra. More than 93% of our team comes from the communities living within the Grevy zebra range and sharing their resources. We work with women, elders, warriors, and we also work with school-going and herder children. We work in a 10,000 square kilometer area in northern Kenya, and in each of these areas, we work to address unique threats to Grevy zebra. And this is really where our team of Grevy zebra warriors, ambassadors, and scouts really come into their own. So at Grevy Zebra Trust, we have three main goals to try and mitigate or limit the threat to Grevy zebra. Our first goal is healthy rangelands to support Grevy zebra and communities and their livestock. The second is mitigating the impacts of large-scale infrastructure development projects on Grevy zebra. This picture here shows an electricity line that cuts through northern Kenya, and it's part of a much larger Pan-African development corridor. And really, the success that we've had to date would not have been possible without working with critical partners in northern Kenya. And I should mention that Ewaso Lions, who are great friends of ours and really important partners of ours, have really been critical in supporting us to mitigate the impacts of development. And our third goal is monitoring and protecting Grevy zebra. And as I said earlier, this is really where our field team of scouts, warriors, and ambassadors have come into their own. So really, communities are at the heart of Grevy zebra conservation or wildlife conservation here in northern Kenya. And at Grevy Zebra Trust, we really believe that if these communities are given the opportunity to contribute to and adapt to the dynamics in the environment, they really would be a force in sort of securing the resources that they rely on and that they value. So really empowering people and giving them a voice, a platform to speak is really something that is at the core of what Grevy Zebra Trust does. But my talk today really is focusing on the power of women in conservation. And I'm really excited to share with you some of the tangible impacts that women have had in supporting Grevy zebra and other wildlife conservation. And I would start with the Grevy Zebra Scouts. This is Patton Labasha. She is one of our 29 scouts chosen by the community to protect and monitor Grevy zebra. The scouts are widows, and they really were at a disadvantage in social status within their communities because of the absence of husbands. However, the women have really taken up their role, really empowered themselves. They've learned to read, write, and use GPS units, and are collecting critical data on Grevy zebra. Their long-term data set, which starts from 2007, has really been critical in helping us mitigate the impacts of infrastructure in the landscape. This map here shows core and critical range for Grevy zebra in dark green. And sort of in yellow, you can see an oil pipeline that was planned to cut through this core and critical range. However, as a result of the Grevy Zebra Scout data, we've been able to influence the trajectory of the pipeline by 4 kilometers to go around this critical area for Grevy zebra. So it's really because of the work of the Grevy zebra, the quality of the data that the Grevy Zebra Scouts are collecting, that we've been able to secure the area and secure the future for Grevy zebra females and foals within that area. The Grebby Zebra Scouts don't just collect data on Grebby Zebra, but they also monitor the drought and also water availability for Grebby Zebra. This picture here is of Wangari, and she started as a Grebby Zebra Scout in 2017. And she relayed a story to us which has always stuck out in my mind. You know, her first day at work, she was walking along this dry riverbed looking for Grebby Zebra, and she came across these two individuals sort of digging at the ground along this dry riverbed, searching for water. And 2017 really was a really severe drought year for here in Kenya. It impacted people and Grebby Zebra immensely. So she said to us that she knew at that moment what her role as a Grebby Zebra Scout was. And she started to dig along the dry riverbed until water seeped through. So she dug this little well, and then she walked away to see what would happen. And sure enough, these two Grebby Zebra individuals walked to the well and started drinking. And she said to us, she really felt she had done something amazing that day. She knew what her role was. And I think it's so important to highlight examples like this, because it's these little activities, these little contributions to protecting and conserving Grebby Zebra that impact their survival on a much larger scale. This foal here was abandoned, and this is another example of women really defying taboos to protect Grebby Zebra. So in Samburu culture, the only animals that can be brought into the manyatta, or the sort of the homestead, are livestock. But Patton Labasha found this foal that had been separated from her mother, and so it was getting late when she found the foal, and she brought it into the manyatta to protect it from predators overnight. Until the Kenya Wildlife Service was able to come the next day and rehabilitate or translocate the foal. So it's just another example of women defying the taboos that are already there, because they're empowered to do so for a cause that is close to their heart. So the Grebby Zebra Scouts operate in Wamba, which is where the greatest threat to Grebby Zebra is land degradation. Here, even when it does rain here in Wamba, because there's no vegetation covering the ground, there really is a lack of pasture. And because of this because the resources are limited, there's a much greater competition with livestock for this resource. And because the ground is bare, when it does rain, you lose 80% of that water to runoff and evaporation. So one of the key things that we're trying to do is to rehabilitate the rangelands, make sure that grass does grow so that when it does rain, it's able to percolate into the ground, and the ground is able to store that water, so that when there is a bad rainy season or there is a drought, there's this storage of water that is able to provide for wildlife and livestock. And to achieve this, we've really been working with warriors and elders within the community to grow grass. We work mainly through holistic land and livestock management. So that's been the approach that we've taken, using livestock as a tool to regenerate the land. But we've really been struggling to get to where we want to be. And even though everyone has been trying really hard so that results can be seen, it's really not since we've included women in this process that tangible results are being seen. So women have now been included in the restoration process, and it started through the Grassland Champions program, but really it was started by one amazing woman, Getty Lamparte, who through voluntary initiatives has really taken her community to the next step in growing grass for livestock and wildlife in her community. So it's really my great pleasure to introduce you to Getty Lamparte. She is the first female Disney conservation hero in Africa.
Okay. Kore nanu kankarna Getty Lamparte. Naasishore lekasi siauti epi nataasa orkasi taapa mpaka nakata amu natabaikia. Naitoki aipa ore taata nataa mbata taata orkasi mbata eramat onkulupuo taata kitii. Naa kore ina ramat onkulupuo nikitii, kore mkutanoni nikitijing'a taatwa naake apake naa irkasin lang naake opisini neyai iyiok wuaratin aipundusie iyiok lomon leramat. Kore lomon naipundusoki iyiok naipundusie iyiok lomon leramat onkulupuo nalotu nanu atua community ai. Kore paalotu atua community ai najo kalo aipundus community ai ramat matumuja tanaa ikitum ena ramat amu keisupat oleng. Amu kore paawuo naifikiria nadol ajo kore entoki narita nkulupuo nerita abaki ntokitin pookin nikiata ng'uesi enkang wenesoro. Nadol ajo nkulupuo naarita tenkaraki maibung'itai inisoro. Naa kore atushukunye nalotu ina ramat nang'asu airorie irpayiani ontomonok. Etiu enaa katum oltoilo supat laidim abaki airorie tiatua community. Kore paiturrur pooki nikipuo mkutano naiguana ajoki kore naikash nikinyototo aibung nkulupuo ang. Nainyoto mateyie nikias pikintibirr abaki enkae ng'oji aitodol metodua abaki atua ena conservancy ang ajo keetae entoki nikiasita supat. Kore paiguanaki ninche neibung intomonok, kakata ntomonok naibung'a nashukie nena tomonok ainei metaa ninche atudung'ie oloshorai nikiasishore nikias entoki supat oleng natashamaitie abaki irpayiani nitoki irpayiani aponu aaret iyiok etodua ajo entoki supat.
Thank you, Getty. So it was really through the voluntary initiative of women to clear the land of Acacia officinalis, the invasive tree species, and start planting grass seed and starting to see grass grow that had an impact. We now, as a result of that, saw warriors and elders take up that initiative. And it started in one village, in Mama Grebby's or Getty's village, called Remot, and now we're seeing it expanded into the other zones within Westgate Community Conservancy. Getty has gone beyond that and is now starting to dig semicircular bunds with women from her community to help catch rainwater and really help it percolate into the ground when it does rain. So this is something else that the women are really taking up with motivation, with determination. And we're really seeing a change in behavior, not just in the way people approach managing the land, but the way in which they are interacting with each other, interacting with their livestock to support grass growth in Westgate Community Conservancy. And another way in which women have really been playing a role is through the use of traditions and cultures. The Ntorosi is a ceremony that where women within the community sort of dress up in ochre and goat skins to pray to the gods for something that is truly close to their heart. And when the women dress in this way, when they start praying, they really are seen as an indomitable force, and whatever it is that they're requesting during this time cannot be denied. So in 2017, during one of the worst droughts here in Kenya, the women of Westgate Community Conservancy performed an Ntorosi for rangelands. They walked across the different zones within Westgate Community Conservancy, praying for rain, praying to their communities, the elders, the warriors, to behave in a way in which grass can be supported to grow in the landscape. And because it is such a strong cultural ceremony, no one could deny that. And really, we saw the communities coming together and again, behaving in a way which supported grass growth. So really the ideas behind rangeland restoration or grassland restoration go beyond just physically implementing activities, but really also drawing on the strength of culture and traditions. And really, women are taking the lead in this. So since this Interosi for rangelands was carried out, an Interosi of a similar kind had not been carried out for 50 years. So it really just shows the strength and the power and innovation of women to succeed at something that really is close to their heart. And so the women are going just beyond restoration of grasslands, but really to support the community health, community livelihoods. And one of the ways in which they're doing that is through the Nkiritan project. So the Nkiritan project is the reusable sanitary pad project, and it was started by the Scouts. In the slide I just showed you here, that's Mama Grevy, and she really, her and a few other Scouts really started making these reusable sanitary pads. But the project has grown now to employ women from the community to make pads in a way that is supporting not just women in the community, but also girls. So really the aim of this is to provide a hygienic option for women during their menstrual cycle and really help keep girls in school during their menstrual cycle. So the Nkiritan project has grown from what the Scouts started to employing 4 women to work within the Nkiritan workshop at the Grebby Zebra Trust Fields Camp in Samburu, but has now expanded. So each of these women now has a tent within her manyatta, and bringing the project much closer to the community, engaging more women that can visit the tent and ask, you know, what is happening here? What are you making? And it gives the women of the Nkiritan project a chance not just to talk about the pads themselves, but really linking them to the presence and existence of Grebby zebra. You can see that the pads are Grebby zebra striped so that when they are distributed to the community and to school children, there really is that link that is being made between this health benefit and Grebby zebra. It's worth saying that these pads, so when they're made, four of these pads go into a pack, and a pack, if managed well, can last a girl or a woman just about a year. So it really is something that is beneficial for women in the community. This is just some of the girls within Westgate Community Conservancy, one of the schools in Westgate that have been given the pads. So really, we're trying to, through this project, we're trying to showcase the benefit that the continued existence of Grebby zebra brings to the community. We're really trying to support the value of the species to the community. And through the women themselves that are making these pads, that have been empowered to make these pads to earn a living for themselves, because again, they are widows and were at a disadvantage. We're really seeing the value for Grebby zebra increase within the community, thanks to the voice and strength of these women. When COVID-19 hit in Kenya, the Reusable Sanitary Pad project switched to making masks for the community. And really it made, you know, for a lot of these communities that are quite isolated and did not have as much support just because of their isolation, the masks were critical, not just in helping them feel like they were being supported, but actually protecting them from the disease. In addition to making masks, the women taught hygiene, so washing hands, and they also set up tippy taps or hand washing stations within their manyattas and spread awareness about COVID-19. To date, we have made over 6,000 masks, and these have been distributed to vulnerable people within the community who probably otherwise would not have received this support. So now it's my wonderful pleasure to introduce you to Damaris Lekiluwai, who is a project officer and leads this women empowerment program for Grebby Zebra Trust.
Hi everyone, my name is Damaris Lekiloi. I work with the Reusable Trust as a Women Empowerment Project Officer. The Reusable Trust Reusable Sanitary Parts Project was also named by our women scouts, and this project helped the girls keep the girls in school. It also provides an hygienic option to the women and girls of our community, as well as providing economic empowerment to the women who are producing the pads. This pad is zebra striped to make sure that it connects directly to the conservation of grave zebra. When COVID hit the world, we switched temporarily to production of triple ply masks so that we can protect our community from the spread of COVID-19. Since one of our graduate women was so much happy and encouraged that she can be able to produce a mask so that she can be able to protect her community from the spread of COVID-19. One evening, as Cynthia went home, she found that one of her neighbors was waiting for her, hopefully to get a mask from her. And Cynthia provided her and her family with a few masks to protect herself and her family. Cynthia was so much happy with her friend, and she also felt that it's really encouragement that Grave Zebra came in to empower them and to empower us so that she can be able to support our community. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Damaris. So the women have really been, it's so motivating to hear the stories of these women, and the support for the community has gone beyond the production of reusable sanitary pads and masks and strengthening community livelihoods, but really to supporting the next generation of leaders within the community. So we've started, so we have a bursary student program, and every year we support a number of students to go through to high school. And throughout the process, Damaris continues to mentor and lead and positively influence the girls, the bursary student girls, and hopefully create a future in which these girls and sort of women will continue to fight for the future of Grebby Zebra. So in Samburu culture, the man is the face of the community, he's the face of the family, he's the sole breadwinner. But because of the work of the Grebby Zebra Scouts, the grassland champions, the women of the Inkiritan project, women are now becoming empowered to become the face of their family. There's a saying in Samburu culture, these women are known as Nkongu Natejeye, the eye that has seen far and come back to share that knowledge. And this is really what empowering these women, what these women have achieved for themselves. They're changing the face of conservation here in northern Kenya. And because of their work, we're seeing impacts. The Grebby zebra population has stabilized over the past 10 years. And really what we're working towards now is population growth. And with the continued involvement of women in this project, continued involvement of women in providing a voice for Grebby zebra and influencing the community, we really do believe that population growth will be achieved. Thank you so much for joining me for this talk today. It's been a pleasure. And if you want to know anything more about Grebby Zebra Trust, if you'd like to contact us, follow us on Facebook or Instagram. You can also join our newsletter. Please reach out on the details on the screen now. Thank you so much.
Great. Thanks a lot, Sheila, for the interesting talk. And those are really beautiful zebras, the Grebby zebra. And I just wanted to, because in the end of your video on the last page, it mentioned something about a rally in 2022. Join us for the rally. So you've actually whet my appetite and you didn't mention it. So I need you to tell me about it.
Thanks, Marty, for that. Well, actually, so up it might just have been the past month, we have decided not to go ahead with the rally just because at the moment we're really struggling with quite a bad drought here in northern Kenya. So a lot of our resources are being used to support the Grevy zebra population so we're postponing the rally potentially to mid of next year or 2023. During the rally, we do ask for support from citizen scientists. We give every single person a camera to take pictures of the right flank of Grevy zebra. And because the stripes are unique to each individual, we're able to get the most accurate population estimate for the species here in Kenya. So I will definitely be sharing out this information when we will be having the rally. We would love your support because that really is how we get to understand the status and the health of the population.
Thanks. I don't know whether it broke up there. Is it something that people can join you, or is it all local people that are a part of it?
No, anyone can join. The more people, the better. And because that will help us get a more accurate estimate of the population. So maybe, Chris, it's something that I can share with you, that you can share with the network when we are sort of having it.
Please.
Yeah.
We would love to do that.
Thank you so much. Thanks, Marty. Great,
thanks.
Okay, so Marty, you will take the South African team up there. Is that in order? So you can become that, okay?
It's exceptionally tempting.
I want to ask Andre Johan. I see that Andre, George has asked a question about the Samburu. Andre, maybe if we can unmute you, that's in the chat, but only the question on the Samburu to start with, please. If you will ask it in person.
I better look up exactly what I just said, but I'm just curious with the Samburu, with the problems they have. I think you responded to one of my questions is traditionally, most of these herders across Africa move between the wet season and dry season grazing areas. What has happened to prevent that from continuing? You said they tended to become settled around schools and the likes. Is the movement between these areas too far for the herders to take their cattle as the season change and then come back? Why is that falling apart?
Thanks. So yes, I was just saying there's so many different parts to that question. It's really quite complicated, but I think there's a number of reasons, the root cause of which is change or loss of culture. So culture really has been what has allowed pastoralists to move around. And that's because they had a lot of cattle. But now we've seen a shift in livestock to goats and sheep. And goats and sheep really are able to stay in one place throughout the year because they don't require the high quality grass that cattle need. So because of that shift in livestock, the need to move has really, has changed somewhat. And then development is coming, cultures are changing. So there's schools being built, there's hospitals being built, there's town centers being built, and we're seeing a lot of people settling around there. And because they have a lot of goats and sheep, that really allows them to stay there and still have livestock. Another aspect is that, moving these huge distances potentially isn't as possible, it isn't as feasible because populations are growing, land is becoming individually owned, it's not communal land anymore. So, and fences are being put up, so that does cause a barrier. And then the final thing I would say is that sort of the land degradation that we're seeing, it causes this there's less ability of the land to store water, and as a result, less ability of the land to actually grow grass and support these large herds. So that I think touches on some of the reasons behind that lack of movement.
Sheila, I'm curious. in the Maasai areas, the government back, I think it was in the 70s, 80s, created these group ranches. In a lot of cases, the ranches were incomplete ecosystems. They didn't have both wet and dry season grazing areas. That posed a big problem. You're talking about people beginning to own land and fencing it off. What happened down in Maasai land, you probably know better than I do, but because of this incomplete ecosystems, the Maasai began selling off the land to Kikuyu farmers who were coming from overpopulated areas. And a lot of the Maasai area tended to be rainy season grazing, rainy season grazing areas for the wildlife coming out of some of the parks to give the land and the parks a rest during the rainy season. And that got to be a big problem. Are you seeing any problems in Samburu land with incomplete ecosystems on these privately owned farms where they don't have both types of habitat?
Yes, I did get it. I think I lost the tail end of that, but I think I got most of that. So, so to some extent, no, that's not really happened here in northern Kenya yet. There are conservancies which are community owned, and they are huge tracts of land. So there's not really that incomplete, the fragmentation isn't, in terms of sort of these very distinct man-made barriers to land are not there. However, what we are seeing is fragmentation just because the habitat itself is not connected because of lack of vegetation. So that in itself is a barrier. So we haven't really seen, there hasn't really been land being sold yet to individuals, although in some areas it's just beginning to start. But we are hoping that the conservancy setup here can really support sort of well-made choices when it comes to land subdivision.
Hi, Sheila. Thank you. Great presentation. This is perhaps one of the best presentations I've seen coming from LCA, and that's saying a lot. Question is the statement you made about the cultural shift. I'm wondering if that is something that's unique to northern Kenya, or if you're seeing it specifically down, as it was discussed, down in the Maasai land. Or is this in fact something that's just unique to your area in northern Kenya?
Thanks for that question. I think it's something that is happening throughout Kenya, although the extent at which it's happening varies. So for example, we work across this huge area, this 10,000 square kilometer area. And the closer that we are, for example, to Archer's Post or Samburu National Reserve, there's more loss of culture within these areas. But then some of the warriors that have just come to camp that are from these really far off areas in Marsabit County, sort of, you're looking at areas like Core, very remote. The culture there is still so strong. And it's, I was having a discussion with my colleague about 2 hours ago, just in terms of what that culture means, so in terms of how, just in terms of how they eat in a room, who they eat in front of, it was a really eye-opening discussion, and how that culture really influences everyday decisions. So it's something that is happening, I think, throughout Kenya, but the extent at which it's happening varies. And certainly in some areas, it is still very, very strong. And, going back to Marty's question, in these areas where culture is very strong, that's where we're seeing, that's where we still have this very traditional movement and management of cattle.
I'm sorry, just one brief follow-up question. The issue of culture as it relates to being a pastoralist is one thing, but the cultural shift with using women in conservation, how is that, I suppose that's sort of parallel to, I guess both situations, both issues are running in parallel at the same speed?
Um, no, not really. I think the inclusion of women is not happening as quickly. And in fact, Damaris is sitting right next to me and could probably answer that a bit better, but I don't think it is happening as quickly. However, what we are seeing is where, where you are bringing women, it hasn't been, the way that women interact within their community, within the spaces here in northern Kenya, that is really changing, and I think it's because women are becoming a lot more empowered. So that is a cultural shift, but it is certainly one that is improving the welfare of wildlife on the land. So it is happening in tandem, but not as quickly. And certainly the cultural shift with women, it is very much a positive thing on the landscape.
100%. Thank you.
Thanks, Sheila and Damaris and team for a great talk. I had a question about the rangeland restoration. It was great to see it being done, and just wondering how it's sort of what scale it's being done, and whether you think it's practical at using community-led approaches to do it at the kind of scale that's required to restore enough land to graze livestock and provide habitat for wildlife. So it's sort of the first bit is sort of how the scale of what's been done so far, and secondly, whether it is affordable for it to be incentivized at community level rather than big funded restoration projects, which is what the government of Kenya at least are proposing. Thank you.
Thanks, Gwilly, and I'm really glad you're able to join the talk. So to answer your first question, at the moment, the rangeland restoration work is being done at a very localized scale within Westgate Community Conservancy, and even within the conservancy, it is made up of 8 different zones, and the extent of impact with restoration varies within these 8 different zones. So it is quite localized, but one of the things that we're really working on at the moment is scaling, and the approach that we think, because of our experience and what we've seen is working on the ground here in Westgate, through our experience, that scaling needs to happen very much by sort of being led by the community, because they are the ones that are intimately connected to the land. They are the ones that hold this authentic value for the land. So sort of bringing in outside players to lead that process, what we have seen is that is very unsustainable in the long run, because that ownership of that process is not there. So just to give you an example, even though we have been working at a very localized scale, a lot of this has been voluntarily led, so what we've seen by the women, they've started this voluntarily, and we have seen the rest of the community take up those initiatives. So in terms of financing rangeland restoration work, in reality, if people sort of chose to do it because they value the land for themselves, for future generations, then potentially it doesn't even have to cost these huge amounts. So that's been our experience, but certainly one of the challenges that we are facing and are looking to address is scaling that impact.
Thank you, Sheila. I would also like to encourage everybody to watch the talks on our YouTube channel by Prof. William Bond regarding the importance of grasslands. Great to see this work. Andre, back to you for the next question.
Yeah, Sheila, I was just curious. For instance, when I lived in South Africa, there was a mentoring program that had begun. I don't know how successful it was, but you had a lot of the white ranchers and farmers beginning to team up with the communities that were getting their land back. And when I lived in Kenya, I remember Guilford Poes, the largest landowner in Kenya, he had started a tourism lodges. I believe it was with the Samburu on the edge of where he was based. We flew up to take a look at it. And Jasper Evans, I believe, also was working with the local herders. And I'm just curious whether you've seen any relationship being developed between these very wealthy, fairly sophisticated ranchers up in the Laikipia area beginning to say, look, we're going to share our knowledge with you if you'll share your knowledge with us, and they're getting some sort of a collaborative effort that could help overcome some of the problems that they're faced with. Does anything like that exist?
Thanks for that question. I think, yes, it does, but maybe, I don't know if I'm as familiar with some of these large ranches in Laikipia, but from what I have seen or from my experience, and potentially, Gwilly, I might put you on the spot here because I know you do have some experience with them. From my experience, there are relationships that have been developed. A lot of these large ranches, range in size from 3,000 acres up to 100,000 acres of privately owned, individually owned land. And, during for example, very bad drought situations like we had in 2017 that we're sort of getting into this year, the ranches that sort of hold strong or continue to to operate effectively are those that have built relationships with the surrounding communities, and whether that's through provision of education, whether it's through some form of agreement of allowing grazing, a certain amount of grazing on their land, which actually benefits the land. Those sorts of agreements are there and have supported both the existence of the large ranches and the tourism facilities on it, and also the existence of cattle and livestock. So those relationships have been built, and where they haven't been built, there has been a lot of conflict. So that's sort of been my experience with it. The relationships are there to varying extents, and where the relationships are good, there's a lot of interaction, conversation, and actually everyone gets on quite well. Yeah, I hope that answers your question.